You shouldn't be here, she said, eyes darting toward the glass door as she unhooked her bra beneath her blouse. Aiden didn't move. He leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, the scent of burnt coffee curling in the air between them. You left the door unlocked. Eva let out a short breath, half laugh, half warning. That doesn't mean you were invited. I wasn't, he said. But I came anyway. She paused. Her fingers hovered near the top button of her blouse. Her hair was still damp from the shower, curling at her neck. She looked like a woman halfway between armor and surrender. Your arrogance is impressive for someone who still gets carded. I'm 23, Aiden said. That's legally adult. In several countries, that's middle-aged. Eva raised an eyebrow. And in most lives, 23 is dumb as hell. A silence stretched long enough to sting. The air felt like it might crack. He was still in his work hoodie, paint on the sleeves, drywall dust in his hair. She stood there in silk and bare feet, skin pale in the morning light like she hadn't touched the sun in weeks. I can leave, he said. You won't. She walked past him, her shoulder brushing his chest. She didn't look at him as she opened the fridge, pulled out a bottle of white wine, and poured a glass like it was water. 10 a.m. Is that breakfast? He asked. Lunch. It's Sunday. Exactly. He watched her drink. She didn't flinch at the taste. The first time they met, she had come into the hardware store asking for cabinet hinges. She didn't know what kind. He offered to stop by and help her figure it out. She said she didn't have time for pity. He said it wasn't pity, it was boredom. The next day, he showed up anyway. She hadn't kicked him out. Now, 6 weeks later, he was standing in her kitchen like it belonged to neither of them. You haven't slept, he said quietly. Eva turned her back to him. You don't get to say things like that. Why not? Because you don't know what it means. A beat. Then. I know I woke up last night and thought about your shoulders. She froze. Just for a second. A tiny, human betrayal of her control. He saw it. She poured another glass. You're young enough to think that's romantic. He stepped closer. It wasn't meant to be. You think you can handle this? She said, voice low. Because you flirt like it's a joke, but this isn't a game to me. I know it's not. She turned around, her mouth hard, but her eyes betrayed something older. Tired. Wounded. A life that had frayed at the edges and was being held together with alcohol and expensive fabric. He reached out, lightly touching the edge of the counter between them. Not her. Just the space. You're not afraid of me, he said. I'm afraid of liking you. There it was. A flicker of something real. Aiden didn't speak. He just stayed there, letting the weight of it land. Then she did something strange. She reached forward, touched his jaw with the back of her hand, just brushed it, and whispered, almost like she was telling herself a secret out loud. You're going to ruin everything. And for the first time in years, she smiled. Not a polite smile. Not a plastic one. A real, weary, dangerous smile that felt like fire had finally reached her skin again. Aiden said, good. Then she kissed him. And it was not soft. It was every second of everything they shouldn't have done. Everything that made her forget her age, her past, her name. He pressed her against the fridge and she let him. For once, she didn't care what it meant. That was how it started. Not with tenderness. But with hunger. He left just before noon, after she pushed him out with a firm hand and a low warning, this doesn't mean anything. He didn't argue. He just grabbed his keys and walked out like it didn't matter, but as soon as the door closed, she leaned against it and exhaled like someone had just finished surgery without anesthesia. The silence in her apartment felt louder than the city outside. She didn't move for a long time. She didn't know what was worse, the fact that it happened or the fact that she wanted it to happen again. When Aiden got back to the shared house he rented with two other guys, one of them was on the porch smoking and squinting at his phone. "You look like someone just handed you a gun and a kitten," Jason said without looking up. "You good?" Aiden just shrugged and walked past him. He didn't answer. He went straight upstairs, lay on his unmade bed, and stared at the ceiling. He tried not to think about her mouth or the smell of her neck or the way her blouse slid off her shoulder when she kissed him. He tried not to think about the gap in age, the whispers that would follow, or the fact that she looked at him like she hated needing anything. But he thought about all of it, especially the way her hand hesitated before touching him, like her body remembered rules her mind was trying to forget. 3 days passed with no messages. He didn't text first. He wouldn't. She had made it clear this wasn't a story worth telling. But on the fourth night, his phone buzzed at 1:13 a.m. and her name lit up the screen. It was one sentence, "I can't sleep." He didn't ask why. He just replied, "Want company?" No answer. Then, a minute later, just her address. Again. As if he didn't already have it memorized. When he got there, she didn't say anything at first. She opened the door in a sweatshirt and bare legs and walked away. He followed. She was already back in the kitchen, leaning against the counter with a mug of tea. No wine this time. She looked at him for a long moment and then asked, "Do you talk about me?" The question hit him in the throat. He shook his head. No, she didn't move. Not even a joke? He stepped closer. "I know how to keep things private." She studied his face like she was trying to find the lie but couldn't. "You should. Because if people find out, they'll drag both of us. You for being reckless, and me for being pathetic." That word hung in the air. She said it without emotion, like she'd already worn it out. He walked to the sink and turned on the water just to hear something move. Why pathetic? She didn't look away. Because men your age are supposed to chase girls who still have options. Not women who have already made every mistake and paid for most of them. He dried his hands with the dish towel but didn't answer. Then he said quietly, "You're not a mistake." She laughed without smiling. "Don't say that like you know me." He looked at her. "Then let me." It wasn't a line. It didn't even sound convincing. But something about the way he said it made her chest tighten. She didn't respond. She just walked to the couch and sat down with her legs crossed under her, like she needed to shrink a little. He sat too, close but not touching. Silence stretched between them again, not awkward, but full. Then she spoke without turning toward him. "My ex-husband remarried someone who just graduated from grad school. My son calls her by her first name, and she calls me Eva like we're friends. She posts pictures of him on Instagram like she earned him. I lost everything in the divorce except the apartment, and even that feels like it's borrowed from a life I didn't get to keep." Aiden listened. "How old is your son?" he asked. 17, she said. "He doesn't know about you." "He won't." Aiden nodded. "I'm not trying to get involved in his life. Or your ex's. Or anyone's. I just want—" He stopped, because the truth felt too sharp. She looked at him. "You just want me. Say it." He didn't blink. "Yeah. I do." The doorbell rang. They both froze. She stood first. "Don't move." Her voice was low but firm. He obeyed. She walked to the door and opened it just enough to reveal a woman standing there with a grocery bag. "Hi," the woman said. "I thought I'd drop these off since you said you were skipping lunch." Eva forced a smile. "That's kind. You didn't have to." The woman stepped forward slightly. "Is someone here?" Eva's back stiffened. "Just the TV." The woman peered past her but couldn't see much. "You sure you're okay?" Eva nodded. "I'm fine, really. Thanks again." She shut the door fast but quiet, then locked it. When she turned around, her face was pale. Aiden stood. "Who was that?" She didn't answer immediately. Then, my neighbor. She watches everything. If she saw you, she didn't finish. She walked past him and poured a drink. Wine, again. Fast. He came up behind her, slow. So what if she saw me? She looked at him like he was stupid. You think people don't talk? He stepped closer. Let them. She turned to face him, her voice rising. You don't understand. You can go back to your friends, your job, your shitty house with your music and weed and bad jokes. I'm the one they'll come for. I'm the one who'll lose everything again. He didn't raise his voice. Then why text me? She stared at him. Because I forgot how to feel good. The words landed like glass. Then her phone buzzed. She didn't pick it up, but the screen lit up with a name she couldn't ignore. It said, Michael, we need to talk. Call me. Now. She locked the screen, set the phone face down, and stared at the counter. Aiden said nothing. But the silence between them was no longer comfortable. It was a warning. They met again the next Friday, unspoken but expected, like a routine they hadn't agreed on but both obeyed. Aiden waited across the street this time, under the dim yellow of a street lamp, hands deep in his jacket pockets, put up. She opened the door herself. No porch light. No greeting. Just a look that held too much and didn't explain any of it. When he stepped in, she locked the door behind him without a word and walked straight into the living room. No whine, no sarcasm, no barriers. Just silence. The kind that meant she wasn't ready to talk but didn't want to be alone. Aiden sat on the floor instead of the couch. She noticed. She didn't ask why. He didn't explain. He took off his jacket, leaned back against the wall, and looked up at her. You okay? She didn't look down. Do I look okay? He didn't flinch. No. But you still answered the door. She sat down slowly, knees pulled to her chest. Her bare feet brushed the floor. He called 3 times that night. Sent an email, too. Said there's been talk. Said I need to be more careful. Aiden frowned. He knows? She shook her head. No. But someone saw you leave. He's paranoid, always has been. Thinks I'm reckless. Thinks I'm going to ruin the court agreement or make things harder for Daniel. Aiden leaned forward. Is he threatening you? She stared at him. Not yet. But he's close. The name landed heavily. Daniel. Her son. It was the first time Aiden had heard it aloud, and it made everything real in a new way. He didn't know what to say. He reached for her hand without thinking, and this time, she let him hold it. Her fingers were cold. We don't have to do this, he said. Her voice was flat. That's the safest lie. He squeezed her hand. No one knows what this is but us. She finally looked at him. But we're not invisible. The next week they didn't meet. She sent one message, too much heat right now. Aiden replied with a thumbs up and didn't push. He went to work like nothing was wrong. Spent nights walking around the city until his legs hurt. Told his roommates he was just clearing his head. No one asked questions. He kept his mouth shut. But by Thursday, he couldn't take the quiet anymore. He texted her once, "You still awake?" No response. He waited another hour before heading to her place. No lights were on when he got there. He stood outside for 5 minutes before finally turning away. The next morning she called him. No greeting. Just, "Don't ever show up without telling me again." He said nothing. She added, "It's not just about you." He took a breath. "I didn't mean to cause problems." She paused. "I know. I just can't afford mistakes." "Not now." Aiden kept his voice steady. "Then tell me what you want." There was a long silence. He could hear the traffic in the background, the muffled sound of a car door slamming shut. Then, I want one night. No guilt. No phones. No hiding. Just once. He nodded, even though she couldn't see it. Okay. When? She answered quietly. Tomorrow. They drove out of the city the next night. Aiden borrowed his friend's car without saying where he was going. She packed a small overnight bag and didn't wear makeup. They didn't talk much during the drive. The radio was low. The air between them was intense, but neither of them knew what this meant. They reached a small motel by the water, the kind of place that felt invisible, forgotten by most people. She paid cash. They got a room on the second floor with a view of the parking lot. When they stepped inside, she stood by the window and didn't move for a minute. Aiden dropped the bag by the bed. You okay? She nodded. I haven't done this in years. He sat down, arms on his knees. What, gotten away? She turned to him. No. Trusted someone. They didn't sleep right away. They lay on the bed fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. She talked first. I got pregnant at 22. Dropped out of school, got married, and never caught my breath after that. My husband liked to control things. Said I was lucky he stayed through the hard parts. Said I owed him everything. Even after we split, his voice stayed in my head longer than his name did. Aiden stayed quiet, but she could tell he was listening. I'm not ashamed of being older than you, she said. I'm ashamed of how much I waited for someone to treat me like I wasn't disposable. Aiden sat up. I don't think you are. She looked at him. You don't have to say that. He shook his head. I don't say things I don't mean. She studied his face for a moment before speaking again. Why me? He answered without hesitation. Because you see through people. And you don't lie to make things easier. She gave a tired smile. I used to lie to survive. I just got better at hiding it. He reached for her hand again. This time she took it fast, like she needed it more than she wanted to admit. They didn't have sex that night. They just lay there, closer than before, listening to each other breathe. For once, there was no pressure to prove anything. The next morning they checked out before dawn. She didn't want to risk being seen. On the drive back, she got a call. She didn't answer it. But the screen lit up enough for Aiden to see the name, Daniel. She saw his eyes catch it. He wanted to come over last night, she said. I told him I wasn't feeling well. Aiden nodded slowly. Did he believe you? She didn't respond. Back in the city, she kissed him in the car before she got out. It wasn't rushed, and it wasn't sad. But it felt final. Like a window closing quietly. Then a week passed. No calls. No texts. Nothing. And then, one afternoon, as Aiden walked out of the hardware store, someone stepped in front of him. A boy. 17, maybe. Sharp eyes. Nervous hands. You're the guy who keeps showing up at my mom's place, he said. Aiden froze. Daniel didn't wait for a response. I saw you too. I know. Aiden didn't speak. He stood in the middle of the sidewalk, holding a clipboard and a receipt pad, with Daniel staring straight at him like he'd been waiting for the right moment to start a fight. People walked past them without noticing anything, just two guys blocking the way, but Aiden felt the pressure in his chest like a warning. Daniel didn't look angry exactly, more confused, more sharp, like someone trying to decide if he was about to say something that would burn everything down. I saw you, Daniel repeated, slower this time. The motel, the car, everything. You think I'm stupid? Aiden stepped back slightly, trying to measure his tone before responding. No, I don't think that. Daniel crossed his arms. You work at the store on 5th, right? That's where she met you? Aiden didn't confirm or deny it. Daniel nodded to himself like he'd already done the math. You're what, 20? Aiden replied quietly, 23. Daniel laughed once, sharp and empty. That's worse. Aiden looked him in the eye. You want to talk to her about this? Daniel's voice dropped. She won't talk to me. Not really. Not since Dad started threatening court stuff again. She thinks I don't notice anything, but I see her. The wine, the late nights, the way she gets quiet whenever I bring up the past. And now she's sleeping with some guy barely older than me? Aiden lowered his voice. It's not like that. Daniel snapped, then what is it like? Aiden looked away. I care about her. Daniel scoffed. That's not good enough. Aiden didn't argue. He just stood there, letting the weight of it settle. Finally Daniel said, she's going to ruin her life over this. Yours too. You think anyone's going to let this slide? Aiden asked, so why are you here? To warn me? Daniel hesitated. I don't know. I guess I wanted to see what kind of guy would actually go through with something this pathetic. Aiden nodded once. Then you've seen me. Daniel looked like he might say more, but then he turned and walked off, fast, before anyone could see his face twist. That night, Aiden didn't go home. He sat in his car for hours, phone in hand, screen dark. He didn't know whether to call her, to warn her, to end it. Eventually, close to midnight, he drove to her building, parked a block away, and waited. Her lights were on. Then off. He didn't move. Around 1:30, he texted her, I need to see you. She didn't reply until 20 minutes later. Just, not tonight. Tomorrow. After Daniel leaves for school. He showed up just after 9. She opened the door, hair pulled back, no makeup, a sweatshirt and jeans like she hadn't slept well. He stepped inside without speaking. She closed the door behind him, locked it slowly, then turned and leaned against it. He came to see you, didn't he? Aiden nodded. He knows everything. She rubbed her eyes. I figured. He hasn't said a word to me all morning. Just left without eating. He only does that when he's upset. Aiden moved closer. He's angry. Not just at you. At the whole situation. She nodded. He's still a kid. But he's not wrong. Aiden didn't answer that. He just sat down on the edge of the couch. She stood for a moment longer before joining him. You think I'm a mess, don't you? She said. No, he replied. I think you're carrying more than you should. She looked down at her hands. He said something last night. I went into his room to check on him, and he asked if I was in love with you. I didn't know what to say. Aiden looked at her. What did you say? She shook her head. I said it wasn't that simple. He stared at the floor for a moment before saying, he's going to tell his father. If he hasn't already. She closed her eyes. I know. And Michael's been waiting for a reason to come after me. Aiden leaned forward, elbows on his knees. So what do we do? She sat still, jaw tight. We stop. Before it turns into something we can't fix. Aiden didn't respond right away. Then, do you mean that? She finally looked at him. I don't want to. But I'm not going to let this explode in Daniel's face. I already lost one family. I'm not handing my son over to a man who wants to punish me. Aiden nodded slowly. Then I'll go. He stood up, but she didn't move. He walked to the door. Wait, she said. He turned around. Just if this is the last time, I need to say something. He waited. When I first met you, I thought you were harmless. Just another kid trying to flirt with a woman who doesn't have time for anything. But then you stayed. You showed up again, and you didn't ask for anything. You listened. You made me feel like I mattered again. That was the problem. Aiden stepped closer. That's not a problem. She shook her head. For someone like me, it is. He didn't touch her. He didn't kiss her. He just said, "You mattered before I met you. You just forgot." Then he left. The next morning, she was supposed to attend a parent-teacher conference at Daniel's school. She didn't cancel. She wore a black coat and clean makeup and sat quietly in the front row of the small auditorium. But when she walked in, Michael was already there. Sitting beside him was Daniel. Neither of them looked at her. When she sat down 2 seats away, Michael leaned slightly and whispered, "You embarrassed him." That's all it took. He didn't even have to ask questions. He just saw the way you acted and knew. She didn't respond. The teacher at the front started talking, but the noise around her dulled. She didn't look at Daniel. She couldn't. Then someone 2 rows behind her spoke louder than they should have. "Is that her? The one with the boy from the hardware store?" Someone else whispered back, "Yeah. It's all over the staff chat." Apparently even the principal found out. Eva didn't turn around. She just sat there. Still. Listening. Waiting for the ground to open up. The meeting ended without applause. Parents filed out, nodding to teachers and pretending nothing had happened, but a few glanced back at her, and one woman with tightly pinned hair gave a look that stayed too long. Eva didn't move. Michael had already left. Daniel followed him without looking back. She sat in the empty chair until the room cleared and her hands stopped shaking. When she finally stood, the teacher gave her a polite nod, not cold but cautious, as if trying to avoid choosing a side. Outside, the parking lot was full of late afternoon sun and the smell of wet pavement. She got into her car and didn't drive. She sat there until her phone buzzed. It was a message from Aiden. Just one line, "I heard what happened. Are you okay?" She stared at it. She didn't reply. That night, Daniel came home and went straight to his room. She let him. Around 10, she knocked on his door. No answer. She opened it anyway. He was lying on the bed, hoodie on, earbuds in. She stepped inside. "Can we talk?" He didn't take the earbuds out. "What's left to say?" She stood by the door. "I didn't lie to you. I just didn't know how to explain it." Daniel sat up. "You didn't think you needed to. That's the problem." She didn't defend herself. "I'm not proud of how I handled this. But I'm not ashamed of who I let into my life, either." He scoffed. "Seriously?" She walked closer. "I was careful. I didn't bring him around you. I didn't let it affect us. You're the one who found out because you were watching." Daniel stood now. "Because you started disappearing. Because I'd come home and the wine bottle was already empty and you'd be staring at the wall like you didn't want to be there anymore." Her voice cracked for the first time. "I didn't want to be anywhere. Not for a long time." He didn't speak. She sat on the edge of the bed. "You remember when Dad and I split? How he made it seem like I was the unstable one. How he took everything and made it feel like I should say thank you for the scraps." Daniel said nothing. She kept going. "I spent years pretending I was fine. Smiling at school events, nodding through lawyer meetings, standing in grocery stores trying not to cry because everything I built was gone. And then one day, someone saw me. Not the mess, not the divorce, not the baggage. Just me. And it felt like breathing for the first time in years." Daniel looked at the floor. "But it wasn't real." She nodded. "Maybe not. Maybe it was just timing. Or desperation. Or a mistake. But I'm not going to apologize for wanting something that made me feel like I still mattered." He didn't respond, but he didn't tell her to leave, either. The next morning, Aiden showed up at her door. He didn't knock first. He stood outside with his hands in his jacket pockets, looking like he had run out of reasons not to be there. When she opened the door, she didn't speak. He said, "I know I said I'd stay away. But I didn't want to let it end with everyone else talking for us. She stepped aside. He came in. She didn't offer coffee or ask if he wanted to sit. He looked around. Everything in the apartment felt different. Dimmer. Like it had been drained. She leaned against the wall. They all know now. He nodded. I figured. She crossed her arms. Daniel won't look at me the same again. Aiden walked to the window. He'll come around. She stared at the floor. I don't think I will. He turned. What does that mean? Her voice was quiet. It means I don't know how to fix any of this. Not him. Not me. Not us. Aiden stepped forward. I'm not asking you to fix anything. I just want to know what's real. She looked at him. You were real. But sometimes that's not enough. He didn't move. Do you want me to leave? She didn't answer right away. I want things to be easier. He took a breath. They're not going to be. Not with me. Not with anyone. But I'm here, and I'm not afraid of what people say. She looked up. But I am. He nodded. I know. A long silence followed. Then she said, You deserve someone who doesn't flinch every time the phone rings. He shook his head. I don't want someone perfect. I want someone honest. They stood there, not touching, not speaking. Just breathing the same air in a room that used to feel safe. Then her phone buzzed again. She didn't check it. He asked, Is it him? She said, No. It's the school. Apparently, I've been asked not to attend the parent committee meetings anymore. They say it's for scheduling reasons, but it's not. Aiden's voice was flat. They're punishing you. She nodded. No one wants to say it, but yeah. He stepped closer, reached out, stopped just short of her arm. Let's leave. Just for a day. Anywhere. She didn't move. And then what? He shrugged. We figure it out. Her mouth tightened. That's not how life works for me anymore. Aiden took a step back. Then maybe this was just something temporary. Her voice cracked again. It was more than that. She walked to the door, opened it, and stood aside. He didn't argue. He walked past her, stopped in the doorway, looked at her one last time, then left. 2 days later, she sat alone in her car outside the hardware store. She didn't go in. She didn't text. She just sat there for 20 minutes, engine off, window cracked. She never went inside. That night, Aiden came home to find a small box on his doorstep. Inside, a folded note and the sweatshirt she used to borrow. The note just said, Some things aren't meant to last. But thank you for making me feel human again. No signature. He read it once. Then he folded it back up and didn't throw it away.